So we will have now Jérôme Chave. So he's online. Jérôme is in France. He's the director of the Center for Study of Biodiversity in the Amazonia in the Guyane. So Jérôme, thank you very much for being with us, even distant. And so we have your presentation here in one screen, and we have you in the other screen. We just need to know if we will hear you. Can you speak just?
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to attend this symposium. My apologies for not being here physically. It would have been a great pleasure to be with you. Symbiose sounds like a fantastic opportunity for all of us to do science on ecosystem services and biodiversity. I'm just stopping now and make sure that you hear me correctly. Jean-Paul, is that okay?
It's good. Yeah. Very nice.
Great. Very nice. Thanks. So I want to spend a few minutes to explain what we're doing with the project that was described by Jean-Paul, Center for the Study of Biodiversity in Amazonia, what it is, and what are the opportunities for synergies with Symbiose. I understand this morning you have had a number of discussions with other centers, similar centers, like the one in Canada and in Germany, in the US. We are not a center for the Synthesis. We are a project. We are a laboratory of excellence. So we are funded by the French government through a scheme called Investment for the Future. And the scheme was started in 2010, was supposed to be lasting for 10 years till the end of 2019, but actually there's been a call for prolongation for those laboratories of excellence, and it's likely that it's possible that we'll get some extra funding to end by the end of 2024. So by that time, hopefully Symbiose will be fully functional, and then Jean-Paul and Marisa and we've been discussing about opportunities for synergy. That's what I want to explain, what we are going to do on our project and where would be those synergies. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, please. The scientific challenges that we want to tackle are the same, the changing state of biodiversity is at risk, and at special risks are the tropics, especially Latin America and the neotropics that are where Brazil and all of Latin America is. And we would like to tackle this challenge. And so if you go to next slide, just wanted to show this context of the Amazon with Davidson's paper in Nature in 2012 showing that the Amazon is a very large expanse of territory that is really strongly exposed to a large number of threats. Global change is one of them, but also human footprint, which is increasingly visible. So what we want to tackle with this project, SEBA, is building capacity in one part of the territory of the Amazon. So for the Brazilians in the audience, this is not the Brazilian Amazonia Legal. So it's just it's part of the biome of the Amazon, but it's French Guiana. So it's in the Guiana Shield, and it's actually a department or a region of France based in South America. So France is willing to put long-term efforts in capacity building and science in this small territory at the northeast of this on this map. So next slide, just to show you French Guiana in a very picturesque way. It's a lot of biodiversity there, as in the rest of the Amazon. There's a lot of technology as well. That for Ariane is being launched, and but it's also a very great challenge for transitions demographically. The territory was less than 50,000 inhabitants back in the 70s and is up 5 times that figure now. So it's changing rapidly, and it goes with a lot of demographic and social challenges. And last but not least, a bridge was inaugurated between Brazil, the state of Amapá, and French Guiana over the Oyapoque River recently, actually. So it was built for a long time, but it's no. So there is a physical bridge between France and Brazil over this river, which is kind of symbolic but nice too. So it's a sort of a red thread to my talk. All right, next talk. Next slide. What we want to achieve with this laboratory of excellence, well, the first it's pretty obvious. We want to promote and support research at the frontier of science. So that's what some call science of excellence. I'm still not sure what that I understand this word, excellence, but anyway. We want to promote the attractive nature of the territory of French Guiana. So we are not the only laboratory of excellence in France, but the other laboratories are based in the large cities of our country and try to promote in a disciplinary fashion some themes of research in Paris, Lyon, Toulouse, or Bordeaux. So we are working in French Guiana and want to attract scientists to work on biodiversity science in French Guiana. We have a training component working with the local university of French Guiana, and there is an obvious regional challenge, which is to develop collaborations with Brazil, but also with other Amazonian countries, especially Colombia, Suriname, Guyana, and Peru. So next slide. The scientific vision, I'll be really brief because this is so this is slide 6. Hopefully you follow. Scientific vision. We want to be at the nexus between ecosystem and biodiversity response, the social response, and the regional earth system and climate response. So all of these components sound really familiar for all of you who've been attending IPBS conferences or IPCC conferences. And the news from France is that we've passed a new law which is enabling us to ratify the Nagoya Protocol last year. So we're still slowly promoting these ideas of biodiversity and access and benefit sharing that go with the Nagoya Protocol. Okay, next slide. I'll be really brief with this as well. We are an interdisciplinary project that brings together, obviously, ecology and evolutionary biology, which is the core of our research, but also medical science and epidemiology, environmental science, and social and political science, and also chemistry of natural products. So for those of you, and I know Jolie is part of the audience, who know the Biota project funded by FAPESP, this is really bears a lot of similarities, and we've been using Biota a lot as an inspiration for building our project. Okay, so we've been doing a lot of capacity building, maintaining field stations. Sorry, this is slide 8. So if you move forward a couple, yes, the next slide. Okay, yeah, here we are. So the capacity building is briefly, a lot of the activities we're promoting are on ground. So we have field stations in French Guiana that we're promoting. We have a new canopy access system that you see on the bottom left of this slide. But of course, we also have herbaria, permanent collections, ediflux towers, and also a lot of chemistry facilities. Right. So the next slide is to describe a bit more. The training component is actually quite relevant to Symbiose. We have funded 27 or co-funded 27 PhD projects since the beginning of our program. We have held annual courses. Last one was a month ago. It's called ANT course. and it was on ant biology, evolutionary biology and ecology. It was held in French Guiana, and in a couple of weeks now we'll have environmental DNA barcoding thematic school that will be also organized in French Guiana under the auspices of SEBA. And we're also supporting master's courses. All right, and there are regional collaboration as well. I was mentioning the FAPESPE collaboration or inspiration, but also we are putting together a memorandum of understanding, hopefully for next year, with the Humboldt Institute in Bogota. Okay, so briefly the science we want to cover, it goes from discovering new molecules, new species, so this biodiversity component, down to processes in the middle layer, which goes with understanding the origins of biodiversity with genetics and ecology of adaptation, but also the role of biodiversity in public health, and finally the role of biodiversity in ecosystem processes, downstream to making predictions on the future of biodiversity in space and time, and its services that could, so nature's contribution to people, some like to call them now. Okay, so finally, my last slide is just very rough, the summary of a very rough discussion we've been having with Marissa and Jean-Paul about possible connections, but of course this is very much dependent on future funding of SEBA and on the consolidation, of course, of the funding by Symbiose. Our idea was that if we continued funding until the end of 2024, we would strongly like to reinforce collaborations with regional-based consortium that would facilitate the analysis and synthesis of biodiversity, because this is what we're doing, but we're doing this just a local place. We've been thinking for a long time to build memorandum of understandings with a lot of university across the region, but it's an enormous task, and we are just not of the size to just do that. But Symbiose is just the perfect instrument for us to work with resilient scientists, but also regional scientists on a limited number of topics. So we would like to empower Symbiose by a number of opportunities. Maybe we could organize annual symposia of Symbiose in French Guiana, maybe some in Brazil, so we could co-fund some of these initiatives, especially if those initiatives are targeted towards the Amazon and biodiversity. And the other option that we have in mind, and that could be feasible, would be to co-fund postdoctoral research associates who would work with jointly with groups in our teams and in Brazilian teams. So of course, this making this happening is highly dependent on how Symbiose will evolve through time, but also on whether we will get a go for the second phase. We'll know that by the end of this year in 2018, and we'll of course will let you know. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Explain what we are doing at SEBA, and explain what are our thoughts for concrete collaborations between Symbiose and SEBA. And thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take any.
So thank you, Jérôme. Let's see if we do have some questions in the room. No questions? Carlos Joly.
Hi, Jérôme. This is Carlos Joly. What are the expectations you have on getting this renewed funding for SEBA from 2020 to 2024?
Hello, Carlos. Nice to hear you. I have a fairly high expectations. the French government has passed the authorization for the prolongation of this funding scheme. That being said, there will be a full-blown evaluation of all projects, and this will be happening by the end of this year. So I can't be sure that it will pass. We've done our best to do good science and to publish a lot, and I haven't shown the figures because I don't think you care really. But we've done our best to be good at what we promised we would deliver. So I'm very optimistic about this prolongation, but of course, no promises.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So Martin from SDIV.
Hello, Jerome. Here's Martin from STIF, the German Synthesis Center. Just have a question. Do you have any rules in terms of who is eligible to get a fellowship or who should be a PI of the projects you fund? Should it be a person from France or could this be a person from anywhere?
Hello, Martin. Thank you for your question. In terms of eligibility, we actually been running an annual call for proposals to attract short-scale projects in French Guiana from all countries around the world. I think we have had 40 nationalities applying and 25 funded since the beginning. The project still specifies that the management of the funds need to be held in France. So those non-French applicants see their funds managed by a French partner. So it's a bit of a constraint. But most of this money is travel money, so it's fairly easy to deal with this. As for PhD and postdoctoral applications, same thing. They have to be paid by a French institute, but then they can spend extended amounts of time in a foreign country. And that's exactly our idea, that if we are funding a postdoctoral student to work within Symbiose, that would be there would be a postdoctoral student paid by perhaps the French CNRS, but who will be collaborating with a Brazilian institute. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Olivier, do you want to say something, or that's nice? So Jérôme, thank you very much. I really hope that SEBA will be funded and that we will be able to collaborate. So Symbiose and SEBA will collaborate in the future. And let's keep in touch. And thank you for your presentation and willing to collaborate with us.
Thank you very much to all of you, and have a good, an excellent meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Boa tarde, good afternoon. We are going to have now a panel discussion on challenges of data management to support synthesis activities. And we invited Deborah Drucker from Embrapa, and Leandro Sulfo. Leandro is there? Yes. Okay, yes. So to discuss the topic of data management in support of synthesis activities. So we could start with Deborah, and then we invite Leandro to come. Leandro is from the RNP, which is Rede Nacional de Pesquisa, is a scientific network. Is a computer network. Yes, RNP is the network which was in charge of the old internet system connecting our university. So it's from that time. Yes, correct.
So good afternoon. Are you hearing me okay? I am a little sick, so I brought my water here. I might have a little difficult talking, but my name is Débora Drucker. I work at Embrapa, Brazilian Agriculture Research Corporation. We are a huge federal network that cover all Brazilian territory, and I'm based in the Agricultural Informatics Center. I would like to thank very much all the organizers for the invitation. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and Jean told me that I have only 15 minutes to talk about a very broad subject, which are the challenges. There are many challenges of data management to support synthesis activities. So I'll try to stick to the time. And I needed to. Well, I brought this text from the context that we received for this meeting. So the word data appears 3 times, and we see that it's a very important aspect of the synthesis activities. So I chose to focus on a specific aspect of data management, which is the data repositories mostly. So there are many other aspects, many other subjects that we need to cover when we talk about the data management, but I have to stick to a little one of them because we cannot talk about all of them in a little time. So when we talk about this data, what data are we talking about? Life has many levels of organization, and also ecological studies, they dialogue with many other subjects, like all the environmental data that we need, also social and economic. So the data that we are talking about is very heterogeneous, and it varies very much on syntax, on schema, and semantics. So it's very challenging to integrate all this data when they come from different sources, different groups. And usually what we receive is something like this. It's tables with yellow cells that we don't know what they mean, and some notes that even the person who wrote it will forget what it was 2 years from now. So we really need to be able to understand, to be able to reuse this data. So when we talk about Synthesis Center, we talk a lot of reusing the data. So to reuse the data, we must be able to interpret this data, to understand this data. And this ecological data is what we call the dark data in the long tail. So this is the NSF in the United States grants, and the amount of grants and the cumulative number of grants. So we have a lot of small grants and a little larger grants, and it's a proxy for the amount of data that will be generated. So the data on the dark tail, it's usually the most heterogeneous, most dependent on human observation and annotation, and it's very difficult to preserve, discover, and reuse. And also when we talk about the Brazilian context, it's very, very hard to be able to get this data. So sometimes we really have a lot of money and people involved, so it's really valuable data that we're talking about, and we must not lose it. We need to preserve it. And also we have some quality issues, because sometimes we get some data on paper, the person who collected will be not the same one that will bring it to digital. So it's very challenging to be able to use this data in the most most quality that we need. So usually when we talk about ecological biodiversity, ecosystem synthesis, we talk about space, time, and taxonomic data, and it's very different, how it can come in different tables and different data sources. And that's usually what we are going to use to conduct synthesis analysis over time. So in this study, they used also log of the ships, the historical log ships, to be able to estimate the population sizes. So we never really know where the data is going to come from. And we also talk about synthesis over time, over space. So this is about the ocean health index. And it's probably not possible to read this, but when we talk about the planetary boundaries, we have a lot of things we don't know, because the boundary is not yet quantified, because we don't have the data. So how can we estimate the boundaries? So this is very crucial when we are talking about the focus on decision making. We really need a lot of data that might be even out there, but we cannot reach. And that's when open science comes, and this was already mentioned before here today. So we need the scientific data to enable to have the trustable estimates and monitoring, to new knowledge creation, and to inform decision making and advance science and society further. But we are still changing from this paradigm of scientific communication that's based on the journal article. So we have more than 300 years that we have been communicating science through the journal article. But the climate change is very, very rapid, and we need to be able to have the decision-making process more fast, and we need the data to be able to do that. And we lost a little this concept about science that should be reproducible. So we have the theory, the data, the analysis, and the publication, and everybody would, in theory, should be able to get access to all of this, to be able to reflect and even have questions about the scientific results. But the truth is that we almost never are able to get the data, nor the analytical code. And often the publications are covered by a paywall that not everybody is able to reach it. So are we really communicating and doing science as we should? What we see most is something like this, that it's not very common to have different groups sharing their data and their analytical code. And usually this guy here is the one that everybody see. He is the first author of the paper. But nobody is seeing this guy here. That's the data collector. He doesn't have a lot of credit on his work, although he was there on the sun and everything, near the snake. So it's really a change of paradigm. It is changing, but it's not a fast change that comes. We have a lot of scientific journals that ask the data to be published, to be able to publish the paper. It's already something. And the credit for data citation is becoming more and more common. And there is a nice initiative that it's called Make Data Count, that people are looking into this subject on how make data valuable as the articles are. And this, I mean, not only the data, but all the data products. And this also covers the analytical workflows and all the other products that we generate when we are conducting our research. When we talk about open science, we need to think about the fair guiding principles for scientific data management and stewardship. So the data need to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And sometimes it's not possible to have all the data open. We have sometimes some sensitive data that cannot be totally open, but if we follow these principles, it's already very useful to at least know that the data exists. So the approach that ANSYS covers, and I have a background with these guys here, so I'm bringing this experience, is the data repository. So this is also the RTR in the US uses this approach, the RTR in Japan. Here in Brazil, we have an experience with the RTR in the Amazon, in Manaus region, in the PPBio. And also we had an experience here with the functional gradient project. Professor Jolie was the leader. So here we can store the data and search for the data through metadata. So it's mainly by keywords. So we can make some, the data retrieval is through the keywords. Then we have all the data packages that are that have the keywords that the user inserted. And then we have all the information about that data, who was the responsible, the project that it was related to, and all the methodological issues, and also the access control. And this is an XML file that it's interoperable with many other softwares that are used for data repositories. And it's quite easy to generate through an XML generator or through a registry like this, or through a specific tool. And this is something that FAPESP is covering in this e-science program that FAPESP has. So there is already an effort here in the state of São Paulo to have the repositories running and able to store the data from the researchers. We are already asking for a data management plan. So when the project is applied, we need to tell what data is going to be collected or generated, where it's going to be stored, and how it's going to be managed. So FAPESP is already asking for this data management plan that already makes the researcher think about the data more. And just last week we had this open science workshop in FAPESP, and the 7 universities of states of São Paulo are already working on having their institutional repositories running. And Embrapa just entered this group last month. So there are already this working group on data repositories with a single meta searcher that's being built. So it's not so far away from us to have a trustable repository to be able to deposit our data. And this is already a reality in many places. So I brought this example from the University of California. So every researcher has already all the infrastructure needed to preserve the data, and also the articles. And this relates to all the data life cycle. So when I talk data, I'm talking about all the data products. And I was focusing more on the first stages of the data cycle, but there are many other tools and other things that can help us with the Synthesis Center. So, but this is probably something that we need to talk on another time. And also the ecological and synthesis is becoming more and more data intensive. So we have more and more data from remote sensing, also from citizen science initiatives, and also from intensive sites and experiments, and also all the modeling that we do. Sometimes it's very intensive computational speaking, but I really think Leandro is going to cover this high performance computing in his talk. So that's something we need to also to be looking at in our center. We need to be able to process all this data in very important and nice tools and infrastructure. And archiving, as I said before, it's not just for data, but for all data products, and that's the approach that FAPESP is considering. It's very clear that all the data products are considered data, including the analytical workflow. So my recommendations would be that we establish a data policy for Symbiose based on the open science culture. So we need to change this my precious approach. That's usually what we see in academia. We need to require that data and analytical workflows are deposited in a trustable repository. We need to ask for data management plans to make people think about it and find solutions. Also, we need to use standards to be able to communicate the data with the world out there. We need to establish standardized vocabularies to facilitate data retrieval, and also to establish best practice for assuring data quality. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Deborah.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of Nelson Simões, which is the General Director of RNP. Due to other commitments, he couldn't be here. So yes, I'm Leandro. I'm from the R&D Directorate at RNP. And I'm expanding a bit more the topic of my presentation, talk about our support to data-driven research and to give some ideas to Symbiose as well. Well, firstly, RNP is mostly well known by this. This is our backbone. Our core business is to provide connectivity, to provide internet capacity to public universities in Brazil and research centers. We have more than 1,500 campi connected. And also international connections, submarine cables, and it's worth mentioning that there are several institutions like RNP around the world. Basically, this is a model followed by several countries, and these institutions, these academic networks, they collaborate among them to share infrastructure. So this is just a map of the share capacity among institutions like RNP. I mean, how one gives access to the other fiber optics. So, but RNP as an institution related to technology, to internet, we were very engaged in this world of data, in working on improving data movement, data transfer. So there are very big science projects like the one from high energy physics or astronomy that in collaboration with the other networks, we help them to move huge amount of data from and to Brazil to abroad. And just to mention, recently we also have a proof of concept of allowing the LNLS, is a synchrotron light source in Campinas, to process data at Santos Dumont supercomputer in Petrópolis. So this is an idea that could be explored by Symbiose, perhaps. The idea was LNLS is about to build a new synchrotron light source, and they were considering to buy a new supercomputer. And the idea was, hey, why buying a new supercomputer if you have a supercomputer which is not fully used in Petrópolis? So let's provide a dedicated channel so we can process data in this supercomputer in Petrópolis. So it was a proof of concept. They are apart 500 kilometers away, and we are providing 2 gigabit per second dedicated for this, to ingest data in the supercomputer in Petrópolis. So just a use case to be example here. Well, but data is more than only data movement. I mean, we were very worried to work on improving data transfer. And a couple of years ago, when we start participating in international events like the Research Data Alliance, we improve our perception that there's much more to worry about data, and there are lots of initiatives for thinking on repository for publications, but there's a huge gap on where to store primary data and raw data. And we saw there are some countries in the world that they already have a concept of a national data service. It's an institution at the national level that take care of managing research data. And this is one idea that we advocate to have it in Brazil in the future. Well, to start in that direction, we start at the beginning of this year a small working group to explore the idea to have a prototype of a data service. Basically, it's a collaboration between EBICT, is another institution subordinated to the Ministry of Science and Technology, and 2 universities in the south of Brazil that were they were selected through an open call that we organized. So basically, we are studying the technologies available for data repositories. We ran a survey to do like a market research. We interviewed more than 4,000 researchers from the CNPq groups answered this survey. And we have this map of the expectation of the researchers concerning open data and the lack of infrastructure to store their data. And the idea is to, by the end of the year, we have this prototype of a repository. Just commenting here, okay, do not anticipate. Another initiative we are working is we are now in an initiative under the umbrella of the Open Government Partnership. I don't know if you know this initiative. It's related more to transparency in the governments. And in Brazil, the Minister of Transparency, CGU, is in charge of representing Brazil in this initiative. And it works like this. Every 2 years, a national action plan is organized and to address challenges that are proposed by the society. And there is an action plan starting now, composed by, let's say, 11 challenges or 11 themes. And one of them was proposed by Embrapa, which related to open government in science. So I'm not going to explain the methodology to create this plan, but I can say that it was several workshops with the participation of the society. And at the end, we come up with this list of milestones to be deployed in the time frame of 2 years, starting now, to be concluded by 2020. And with these 9 milestones, and our NP is involved in this one, which is to deploy a federation of data repositories. So our idea is By the end of the year, we will have our own prototype of data repository, and perhaps to integrate to that initiative that Deborah just mentioned here in the state of São Paulo. And perhaps, if I don't know how Symbiose will be created, but an idea could be all participant institutions, they could have their own data repository and also be part of this federation. Just to mention, there are lots of institutions being part, like Fiocruz and CAPS, NPQ, and others. Well, these are little experience in data repositories. And but I brought here two things that I want important to mention here. One, our priorities for the next contract cycle of RNP. RNP is a non-for-profit social organization. It's funded by the government, and every 4 or 5 years it has a contract with the government, and in this contract we establish new indicators and new deliverables. So this is our main priorities concerning infrastructure. Okay, the first one is related to being an internet provider. Okay, is provide a scalable and more secure communication infrastructure. I mean, to expand the links, we'll have multiple 100 gig links across the country, also new submarine cables also to Africa, which is being deployed. And two things that I want to highlight here. Cloud service, we want to operate like in a marketplace model, and we're going to explain this. And also to operate a national science center. So we are in a position very similar to this workshop here. Here I'm understanding that there is this project to model how could be a center for synthesis. And we are now discussing how could be a center to support e-science projects. Okay, let me just skip here. So we have some insights. This still to be confirmed, but the initial idea could be a center formed by a pool of specialized people to provide tailor-made solution, and also a set of cyber infrastructure. I mean, the idea of this center is to be operated in conjunction with LNCC, the National Laboratory for Scientific Computing. So they have the HPC capability, and the idea is to have these two institutions, RNP and LNCC, together providing cyber infrastructure to other local centers. So we could have other institutions here that could consume this cyber infrastructure and also to provide a set of service, specialized service to the research community. And here I want to mention that our first customer of this center we are looking for is this institution, which is a virtual institution. Is I don't know if you know, it's called, let me translate, Interinstitutional Laboratory for E-Astronomy. Is a institution, is a virtual institution. RNP, LNCC, and National Observatory hosts it, and it provides a set of service to the astronomical community, and also there is a INCT related to it, and they need specialized support on ICT and ICT infrastructure to provide the service to the astronomers. So this is how our first idea, and perhaps we could work on how Symbiosis could benefit from this initiative as well. So as you hear, we don't know exactly how we work this science center. We will run next week a meeting like this one to discuss the model, but we are using this a design sprint methodology. It's a version of design thinking, but it's intended to run in 1 week. Actually, we have an immersion, 1 week immersion to understand the problem, to brainstorm, and to converge, to prototype, and to test the idea. And like here, we are inviting people from also INPE, LNLS, CBPF, LNCC, and other institutions, National Observatory, to build this concept. Okay, just to go back here a bit, when I mentioned about cloud service, this is another initiative. The idea is RNP to operate as a broker and a marketplace. So, for instance, this is already running, okay, it's a proof of concept. If you access this address, you will see something. So the idea is to have in one place several tools in the cloud, also for IT staff in the universities and researchers. So let's say a researcher or research group wants computational capacity, wants virtual machines. You can enter this marketplace and choose an offer of Amazon, Microsoft, Google, RNP, or Cloud USP. So idea is to concentrate the offer in one place, so the researcher can choose the best offer. And we are negotiating good prices, in the economy of scale with these providers. And also other tools, communication tools and others. And let's say a tool that eventually is developed in a research field, which is useful for that research community, could also be included in this marketplace. So this is an ongoing thing. So I'm finalizing just to mention 2 use cases here. We have this partnership with CAPS to deploy solution to the postgraduate programs. And we are also using that methodology, design thinking, to prototype solution for post-graduation programs. And we are running a pilot with these 3 universities and 6 post-graduation courses, which is already derived some customized solutions for coordinators of post-graduation courses, also a tool for banca remota to evaluate students, also a scientific version of that marketplace, and so on. So, I mean, just to mention that we are using that methodology and our expertise in building a community to help institutions and other centers in the ICT part. Okay, and as I'm here, I also am almost obliged to mention our involvement in CBBR, which since 2012 we are also participating in this development, and currently it's in a phase of being adapted to use the Atlas of Living Australia platform. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Leandro and Deborah, for your contributions. And so we have time for discussion, a few minutes. So if you have a question, please. Mercedes. And then Marcelo.
So thank you, Deborah and Leandro. Quite interesting presentations. I have a question for Deborah and the other for Leandro. Deborah mentioned that also this open data culture is changing, and it's changing really. When we started to discuss that some years ago, the scenario was completely different. But I think that one key issue is still the capacity of our institutions to deal with all these changes. I mean, the data centers that we have, especially at universities, are not that strong or well established that can support scientists to do that. And sometimes this is just another level of responsibility that we are putting on the shoulders of these scientists. So I believe the culture is changing, and this is great and they're welcome, but we still more support from the intermediate level or technical level to do that. Because it's another thing that we have to learn and put people to do that and use research funds for that. And this is also for Leandro. How can R&P help with that? Because I think one aspect that you also have is you are investing a lot in capacity building in the Brazilian institutions. And I think this is one point that is quite important for Symbiosis, is to have people training to use all these facilities. This is the point, that maybe people, they don't know what R&P is doing, and when they know, they don't know how to use. And I think that is also important to maybe to make that more explicit to the public and try to address different audience and on the way they can improve the research they are doing using these infrastructures.
Okay, I think we can have another question, Marcelo, and then you both could answer.
Thank you, Deborah and Leandro, for the presentation. My question is for Leandro about the Brazilian system for biodiversity, CBBR. As you know, for the discussion here, to have the data available for the scientists to have the meetings is the most important issue. Once the CBBR is going to be held at RNP, how do you think this data could be available for the Synthesis Center?
Okay, we have one more question from Emilio. And then we...
First of all, thank you very much. That was really interesting, and I'm a real advocate for broadening our science and making it more open. And so I kind of saw this presentation breaking down along two lines, one being capacity building and training and data management at the PI level, and the second being infrastructure for long-term storage of those data and accessibility of researchers to research tools. So there's clearly a need for training students, postdocs, scientists at all stages. And that can be done with workshops like the FAPESP workshop or the data carpentry type workshops. And then infrastructure, I think I counted in the presentation 6 different current repositories between PepeBio, KNB, other ones put together by EBICT. And that didn't even, not in the presentation, were the data dryad or any of the other repositories. And so my question is, given that resources might be limited, and since I wasn't at the first workshop, is one of the ideas that it's best for this center to develop its own infrastructure for storage and sharing and management of data? Or is it better to take advantage of the resources that are already available, whether it be PepeBio database or publishing data in Dryad, given that resources might be limited? What are the trade-offs that are involved in doing that? And related to that then is the financial aspects that go with paying for data archiving by individual PIs. And we didn't even talk about open access publishing, which is the final closing of that loop.
Okay, I think we open for the responding, and then we have at least 2 more questions after you respond these questions.
Thank you for your questions. So I start with Mercedes. I think the institutional capacities are also changing. So we have more capacity now than we had 5 years ago, something like that. But it's still, for sure, training is a main challenge. We need to conduct training, and that's not something that researchers like doing, filling metadata register. It's not fun to do. People prefer to do more exciting things like than that. So I believe the center need to have a very well-established policy that requires that is done, because otherwise it won't be done. So and conduct training together with these initiatives that are already going on. So I think my talk and Leandro are very complementary. So he is offering RNP to Symbiosis to be a case. So I would say let's go for it, because it already answers some of the Emilia's question. I don't believe that we should have a repository run by Symbiosis. It's a lot of money, a lot of work, and we have other priorities, and there are already resources available. There are resources available here at USP, so Antonio Saraiva is very well involved with that. So there are many possibilities that we can use the resources that are already available, and what we need to do is to establish how it should work. And of course it will be painful, but there is no way that researchers can run away from it. We really need to have the data very well documented, and it not always will be totally open, but all these repository softwares, they handle access control. So the data is there, the metadata is there, and the access can be negotiated case by case. But we have in Brazil a lot of misunderstanding about data, so there are many decisions that are made based on fake science. So we need real science and real data, so we need to put our data there for everybody to see, because we cannot complain the fake science is going on if we don't show how we are doing ours. So the one that's doing fake science will be pressured to show their not so good data, and that will come up. So we need to change this paradigm, and it's painful, but it needs to be done. And well, CBBR was asked to Leandro. I think I answered everything that was on my...
I will start by the last one, concerning having each institution has its own repository or a centralized one. Actually, I think we have several things to consider. Some institutions, they want to have the control of where their data is. They have their own policies. I mean, we must have a formula that works for all, in the sense that we can work on leaving the institution to decide. So some institutions, perhaps they have their own, they have some internal policy that oblige them to have it in-house. I don't know, they want to be in the control. But I understand that there are also, let's say, homeless institutions that they don't have this infrastructure, and some centralized organization should provide it. The problem of having all centralized is funding. Okay, I would love to see RNP being together with EBICT, national data service, but to have it to actually to work like this, we must have a long-term funding from the government, because we are talking about to preserve this data, and I think it would be more perhaps sustainable in the short term to work on the federation. Each one is in charge of storing its own data, and we have a layer on top of that to orchestrate this federation, that RNP could work on that, and perhaps offering an additional repository for the homeless, let's say. It could be a way. Concerning CBBR, Well, I must say that I'm not very familiar with the policies in CBBR and the architecture as well, but I see what CBBR is providing, like data and tools, as part of that scientific marketplace that I mentioned. And well, I'm ignoring if there is some policy currently, which I don't know, but I think all should be integrated. I mean, if you have repositories here, I mean, in some way, as we are talking here about integrating data for synthesis from several institutions, CBBR must be a provider for this, as others. Like there is another initiative like CBBR called SISMOI, also related to climate. It also should be part of it, which is RNP is also helping to develop. So in some way, I think everything should be integrated and should work for it. And concerning capacity building, in that eScience Center, I mentioned that next week we will start running workshops with the community to discuss, but I previously tried to run a survey looking at other e-science centers in the world, science centers in the level of universities or in the counter level, and identified 21 type of service for e-science, and part of them are related to training and consultancy. And training, one thing I think is important is training like software carpentry you mentioned, and data carpentry, it's a variation, to attack the young scientists, and they need to know these new tools of, I mean, they must know Git or Jupyter Notebook and things that are more related to... yeah. This is one thing, but and another thing of this science center is the idea is to leave the researcher to think on their research. I mentioned the astronomy group that we are assisting, and they part of their time they are thinking on the best hardware architecture to deploy the storage, which machine they should buy. Which is the most efficient architecture, and also work on hard drive is stopped working, the hardware stopped working. So the idea is to, okay, let's take care of that part. Let's have specialists on computer science to help them on the side on architecture, etc., and to have people specialized for supporting ICT to keep them free to devote in their research and capacity building on other things.
Okay. Well, thank you. We still have well, we are running out of time, but we have 3 questions that Robson, then Tiago, then Martin. So we'll have 3. Oh, we have these 3 more questions, and then yeah. Okay, Robson.
Hello there. Are you listening? I will be very quick. How ready, Robson? How ready our repositories are for sharing data? Because I think Symbiosis would need this data, and if Darwin Core data would be useful, or how far away from this standard we are?
How far away from the Darwin Core, you mean?
Yeah, I'll also be quick. I participated in a working group in NC's long, like 15 years ago or so, and they were very, very pushy on their data sharing policy. However, it turns out that we were in a working group that was not actually using our own data. We were using public data, and that was a problem to them. because we had to provide to their repository data that we got from a different repository. And that is something that we should keep in mind, that not all working groups are the same, and not all of them have empirical data, and the policy does not apply to everyone equally. And over time, I also participated in different synthesis centers in Nascent and then in IDEV. And what I see is that people have become less and less strict about their data sharing policy, because they are now understanding that groups have different purposes and they use data in very different ways. So that's just to keep this in mind.
I try to be quick, and it's more a comment. So we are also working since many years on our data policy, and I can totally, so I'm Mark, saying this, and I can totally agree with Thiago that we struggle a lot with working groups, and that seems to be an inherent feature of synthesis working groups, because they synthesize data, and it's usually data from all different sources. So what we try now to push our groups with more or less success, because many of these researchers are, all of them, are super busy. We at least collect the metadata of the data they use. So we are not pushing them to our portal. We have also a portal, and that's actually something which we now will not use that much, because the people publish the data with Zenodo, and then they don't see any reason why they should put it in our portal. So but what we do is collecting the data, the metadata of any data sets they use, that someone, whoever it is, wherever it is, can see what the group is using, which data, and where they are. Are they in Zenodo, Figshare, or in Dryad, or whatever? And some of these portals meant the repositories are less functioning because they are just dumps of data. You just put there a table without knowing what is in the table. And that's something which really doesn't help in the future, because you know where the data are, but you don't know what the fields are, you don't know what is in the field, so you can't really search through the data, you just know that there are data. So it's not really helpful. So what I can advise is trying to make it obligatory, that's how we do that every group or project should at least provide metadata, as you mentioned that, and there should be somewhere visible, searchable. And what we also do now, because the researchers like me and everyone else, they have 60 hours jobs, they don't do that, as you know, because we were not trained to do that. It's not the young researchers which is the problem, it's us and the older ones. We give them support. We give them a person by hand at their computer, supporting them and making the barrier, the incentive to do that with the meta as minimal as possible. So it's really simple to put in the metadata. It's not 10 minutes, it's not 30. We have a limit of 5 minutes. Otherwise, the people will never do that. That's my experience.
Okay, thank you. Mercedes wants to.
Please.
Last one.
Last one. Just I agree with all of this, but as Deborah mentioned about the fake science, and I think there are very few groups in Brazil that are applying that. We know the names. But I think when we think about this, one idea of the synthesis centers is provide support for decision making. I think that really all the information and data we use, we must be tracked back and see So I think this is quite important. I know that it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult because of different sources, but we have to assure that the data and information we are using are valid and we can track back. This is quite important to this dialogue with policymakers. This will make us different from the groups that are using fake science to support policy-making decisions. So,
okay, Antonio?
Yeah, just a quick comment also. Just a comment. I think it's very important that we take into consideration this issue of data management as part of the project, let's say, of the Symbiosis Center. However, since we have right now more than one initiative on building either federal or regional repositories being thought, like the one you mentioned, like the one in São Paulo, I think that what we have to do is to stick to those and make sure that whatever we come in future for the Síntese Center, it's complies or uses one of those infrastructures. I don't think we need one for the center itself, because it will be a burden, but we can use those whichever, or more than one. And for instance, if people are using genetic data, probably they want to use any of those. They will use like gene bank, for instance. So it's just a matter of having somewhere where to look for the data. So it may be domain specific, so people won't use either São Paulo or the federal one. They use other. Yeah, they're already using that. And as for the CBBR, Mercedes and I have been, she's been the leader of that and been part of the technical committee for years. So it's there, the data is there, no matter if the platform is changing or not. So it's machine and human readable data, so it's already useful for the community. The main issue is that it only covers currently one specific type of data, which is basically observation. So it's Darwin core data that someone mentioned. So, and I think that for the Synthesis Center, we need much more than that, which was part of the original CBBR idea or concept. But maybe we can follow that concept in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I start with Thiago and Martin. Thank you for your reflection. I think it's a critical aspect that you brought. So I'm aware that it's not so well established, the culture of documenting data, metadata and everything, and also on the secondary data that most of Synthesis activities working group will be focusing on. But there are some particularities in Brazil that I mentioned, and Mercedes also. And I was talking about the metadata, especially because all of the what Antonio also mentioned, that as long as we know where the data is and how to track back all the workflow that was conducted and reproduce it, that's what we need for a start. So it doesn't matter if the data is on GeneBank or on Figshare or wherever it is, we need to know which data were used, and also the data usually should have licenses, so there's some things we can do with this data or not, but we need to track that back. I believe that's crucial for our center to have that in the policy. But FAPESP is working with these repositories, and they establish like 4 main metadata fields. It's to be very simple. The idea is to be something simple that won't take time. But there is a trade-off, because we need to do the curation. So that's something that Martin said. It doesn't. It's not very useful to have the data there in the repository, and it's crappy data that you don't understand. That's something that we worked a lot in PPBio. We have a data manager that goes there and see if it makes sense, if the data is coinciding with the metadata and everything. That's something harder to think in the beginning, but we must focus on the data and metadata correspondence and quality also. So it's a challenge, I think. We need to establish some rules, but they cannot be so strict so people won't follow. But we cannot just make it loose. And something also that's important is the GitHub, and there are codes and things that I know that you do a lot, follow your work and everything. So that's also something very important to be shared. So usually the R packages are there, but we can make them more visible, and all the workflow and everything. So it's not easy, but I do believe we can have a few points in our policy that won't be so hard for people to follow, and we need to help them. And Robson, the Darwin core, it's mostly for Robson. It's for the observation data that CBBR deals with, and CRIA also. And most of the standards, that's why standards are so nice, they can embed the Darwin core standard. So the EML was the one that I showed. All the taxonomic data is on Darwin core, and and it's interoperable with GBIF and everything. And also the Dublin core that it's used in this space is the same thing. Actually, Darwin core was derived from Dublin core, so as long as you use a standard, you should be able to retrieve it.
Okay, well, thank you, Deborah and Leandro. Thank you for the questions. So we have to move on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Our next panel is going to address stakeholders' demands and perspectives. You have two invited speakers, Ana Paula Fioresi. Ana Paula is Deputy Superintendent for Operation and Extreme Events da Agência Nacional de Águas. E Kátia Ribeiro. Kátia is General Coordinator for Research and Biodiverse Monitoring do ICMBio. Thank you both for attending, accepting the invitation. And as you are short of time, we are going to ask you, Ana, to make the presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We have to leave around 4:30, so I will start, and I don't have a PowerPoint, only oral points. And first of all, I would like to tell you what we are doing here, because thank you. Because we are at the National Water Agency, a bunch of hydrologists, engineers that typically don't care about the environment, or so we are not the typical audience. We are the agency in charge of water management, the water management system in Brazil for water allocation in some rivers. We are in charge of dam safety, and we are almost in charge of regulating or of providing the guidelines for regulation of sanitation. This is something that's going to happen in the next few months. So, as I said, we are engineers, hydrologists. We are just a few biologists, just a handful of people worried about ecosystems and so on. But we do have a national water law that says that the water management should not be dissociated from the environmental management. And that's something that we have to do since 1997, and we have not actually been able to implement that. So we had previous relationship with CNPq, especially in climate change, and that's why they asked us to present our demands from the very beginning of this initiative, and we realized that we could benefit a lot from biodiversity and ecosystems synthesis center, because we do need to rely on science information and science production to be able to achieve these, to achieve this law requirement that is to bond environmental and water management. So, after the CNPq told us they wanted to listen to what we need, to what our demands are, we started talking about this, especially with ICMBio, which is here, and we came up with a short list of 3 potential things. They have not yet been discussed with the board of directors. It's something from the technical area now, but yeah, it should be discussed with them. So these are potential demands that we have first draft. The first one is we do need data on payment for environmental services. We have a program we pay for environmental services, but it's not scientifically measured. So every year we have to struggle a little to make the point that, to make the case that the forest matters for water quality and water quantity, especially for water quantity. So that's something that's, we need information, we need scientific information to move on with that, and to make it a stronger program, and to make it available for the entire country and not only for the 3 or 4 pilots that we have right now. So this is something that we know the information is out there, but we do not have the access to the information in a way that we can readily use for decision making. Another thing is bioindicators for water quality that we need to support water quality monitoring. We know that some states are using this, some state governments are using this, and we know there are some universities that are already have data on this, but we do not have this for national level quality monitoring. So this would help establishing new protocols for monitoring water quality and to add to those physical and chemical indicators that we already use. And the last one, for me it's the more important one, which is environmental flows. You are going to hear some of my colleagues, not from ANA, but from other agencies that manage water. They will tell you we know, we have environmental flows established. No, we do not. We have established only the flows that are necessary downstream, but considering water uses and not environmental needs. Because we have not established a methodology to do that. There are many that are available. We didn't decide for one. We are probably not going to decide for one, because we have 12 hydrographic regions. Many of them are bigger than many countries, and many of them have more than 2 or 3 ecosystems inside them. So they vary a lot. So we are probably going to have some methodologies, but we need to know them. We need to have a list. We have to establish guidelines, and we do not have the scientific information for that. There's one extensive study that was performed by the Federal University of Bahia for the San Francisco River Basin. But I have read this from the beginning to the end, and it's massive. And I have to say that's not the way decision makers should receive information. That's not because we are dumb. We are not dumb. In ANA, we have 80% of, more than 50% of our employees have a PhD, and 80% have a master's degree or PhD. So we are not really dumb. But we do not have the time, and we do not have to go to the scientific study. We do not have to go to the specificities of it. So this Synthesis Center, not only for biodiversity, but for climate and other fields of study, the bigger benefit is to translate and to provide access to the scientific information that is already there, and it's not really accessible. I really like what Deborah from Embrapa mentioned about, fake science making the way easier than real good science into decision making, and it's probably something that happens a lot, including because of the these people are usually willing to sell their science to the decision makers. So we have to find a way to connect real good science, not from one or two, but for a bunch of scientists to the decision making. And we have also a very big challenge, which is not really one field of expertise that could benefit from this Synthesis Center, but it's more a cross-cutting issue, which is disasters in general. Droughts and floods that are becoming more frequent and more intense with climate change and also with climate variability. I'm not going into that because it's another event, another meeting. And also from other types of disasters like dam breaches, like the one that happened in Mariana with the São Marco dam that has breached. What happens is that if we do not know what are the environmental requirements for rivers in normal conditions, we cannot start to imagine what's the impact of droughts like the one we are currently going through in northeast Brazil that has started in 2012 and doesn't seem to go away. So how can we use, how can we provide what the environment needs? And what are the costs for the environment? How can we use these to set priorities? Who should I give the water? Where should I allocate the water? We do not have the scientific information for that, and we do need this. I do believe it's out there somewhere. Also something that this initiative to synthesize scientific information will show is what has to be done, what's still missing. And that's something that we have like a tradition, or we try to help scientific production. Right now we have 17 research teams working for us with CNPq and CAPES about climate change and water. We bring them together every year since it started in 2015. So next week they are going to meet again for the third time. And that's an experience that has shown us that science, they want to talk to decision makers. They want their researches to be relevant to society. So every time we bring these people together, they have an opportunity that I think it's rare to talk to each other and to talk to us and know how they can make an impact in society. We also have some projects with professional masters. So for teachers' education, for civil protection, and for water management. But we do not have the tools to really evaluate what they are producing and what can be used for decision making. So just to see if I have everything covered. Yeah. So I think that's it. I probably forgot something, but I'll be here to answer your questions.
So thank you, Ana, for informing us potential connections and the size of your challenging. Okay. Okay. So, Katia, please.
Good afternoon. I'm really very glad to be here, and I'll talk a little bit about our institute. I work to Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation. That is... Oh, let me... It's strange. It's slim now, Brazil. And we have really in Brazil a very, I'll stay here, I think it's not necessary. We are in Brazil with a very important responsibility. It's good to emphasize. 20% of the global biodiversity and 30% of Brazil are protected areas, covered by protected areas. We have about 200 indigenous ethnicities, not communities, and about 1 million people, and many traditional communities also. The protected areas cover all these realities, and we have at the federal level about 300 areas that we call conservation units in Portuguese. It's very strange, but that's the name. And in 12 categories, all categories of IUCN, and it corresponds to about 10% of the country, and nearly 30% of the sea now in this year. And we are very strange institution because we are responsible for these areas, for the threatened species, also conservation strategies, and we are also an institution designed for research. We try to put all these agendas together. So we are, as we know, in a rapidly changing world, but we have many times in the same time. We deal with this reality when dealing with protected areas, with so many different people and in so many different times. For example, we have this so large array of languages and tribes and so on. And these people are also, these are the people directly related to biodiversity and who bring some novelties for us and other possibilities of managing and dealing with the territory. And we must also give voice to those people. And this is really a challenge when putting together not only the languages, but also the times. We are very quick, very rapid, and these people are not so rapid. And I think they are very healthy in this decision. And also we have a diversity of drivers, threats, and opportunities also. For example, here we have the projects of infrastructure in Amazonia and mining projects for the country. And as an institution, we are ahead the process of evaluating the conservation status of Brazilian species of the fauna. But all the processes we are ahead, they involve a large array of researchers and many other people. For example, for this process, when 12,000 species or taxa were evaluated, about 1,200 researchers were involved. And this is the large picture for these species. We have about 1,000 threatened species of the flora. And we've related to many threats, but we can highlight the fisheries in the sea, the land conversion in Cerrado, Brazilian savanna, and the hydroelectric power dams in Amazonia. But we have many scales of planning and decision making. So we run from local agreements that must be built together with local people and to national agreements. And we are responsible for informing the Ministry for Environment in many questions. And so, as a whole, we can see that we need diagnostics, prognostics also, evaluations of effectiveness of policies, we are ahead, and also toolboxes, we can say, for good practices to be able to consult these array of solutions, but also of bad practices. We have, for example, many bad practices related to hydroelectric power dams, as we know. Sometimes when building these decisions with scientists, we see also what I can call an excessive academicism, a very deep fear of not being scientific. I can explore this idea further, but a large fear of giving really the solutions to a certain problem. And we can also say that a conservation practice is necessarily an agreement between people. And these people have very different perspectives and expectations and knowledges. How to put all these people together. And we are an institution that is building this expertise. Obviously, with a large portion of biologists yet, but we are trying to be more diversified. And we must promote this dialogue between the different. And also, we must walk on the sandals of others. We must exercise the empathy so that we can understand what are the questions that are being proposed. And to that, we really need enough time, qualified meetings, clear goals, and adequate financing. I will show you rapidly our research strategic plan. It's based on a method called Open Standards for Conservation Practice. And it's developed considering the biotic targets or the derived associated social targets, and also the threats, opportunities, and then we identify the conservation strategies. With these strategies identified, we are able to understand which are the hypotheses we are working that are related to our conservation strategies. Many times we do not have these hypotheses very well highlighted. And then we are able to build a result chain when all these premises and rationales are put in evidence. So we have many steps. And we identify the main threats and the conservation strategies. And then we build this result chain when we have, collectively, we try to identify which is the logics of intervention, the chain of expected results, and it helps to have an evaluation of the impact of the strategy. Because we have checkpoints to evaluate the effectiveness of the process. We have some examples. And I have here a flyer for the plan. And these are the 9 main strategies. They go from valorization of biodiversity, improving spatial planning, and some errors here, improving the contribution of the Institute for Environmental Licensing process. I'll talk a little bit about it. A promotion of sustainable use, considering fishing, hunting, and so on. We are discussing deeply the hunting now, that is a dogma in Brazil. Qualifying participatory monitoring and management process, improve intelligent enforcement programs, promote the management and control of exotic species, restoration, and fire integrated in adaptive management. We have an advisory board with scientists, practitioners, and representatives of traditional communities. And we have also guidelines for grants and also other sources. And we are working on data management and knowledge management. We have many forums and workshops and so on. I think that 4 at least per week. We are a little bit crazy. And just to show some strategies, we are working on data management, for example, putting available the data from environmental licensing from IBAMA. And also all our systems are integrated and with data available under a common policy, published policy. We have some good examples that need a leverage. For example, the commercialization of forest resources, proposals for restoration of Brazilian savanna. All these things are with many research institutions, of course. Adaptive integrated fire management, including local, ecological, and traditional knowledge with the elders, and really giving good results in conservation, but it would be nice to have a deeper understanding of what is going on, both in environmental, also in social questions. And I would like to give a look to the strategy 6, that is improving the contribution to environmental licensing. We really want a real impact. So we have many questions. One of them is which are the good practices and knowledge gaps to propose effective conservation measures and alternative locations, for example. We have a bold example, I think that some of you know very well, like Paulo and Rafael. And we run a study in Carajás National Forest, where we have the largest iron mining in the world, and it's the largest deposit in the world. And we have there, for example, more than 50 endemic species of plants and thousands of caves, and how to make a compromise, how to deal with this reality. So in a place where we have plants, caves, and iron occur in the same place. So what to do? And then we used the best available information, the best methods to build models. And these models were the basis for a very interesting process of negotiation. But the question is that all the models, all the modeling process was run with people from the company, people from IBAMA, people from many situations, so that the result was understood and could not be questioned. We could question the recommendation, but not the result. And then it was the basis for a political decision, but a decision that was well informed. And as a result, we are very proud of it, indeed. In the first management plan for this protected area, we had about not exactly 100% of the region with iron, with Kanga, as a mining zone, and now it's 1/3 of the area, and 1/3 as a conservation zone that is now a new national park, and 1/3 it's designated for new studies and for a decision in another time. We have other examples, all of them with this kind of good partnership. But the question is that we have access to the places where decisions are made, and also to some governance forums. So we have two examples: guideline for environmental licensing, one related to migratory birds and airports, and another related to turtles and infrastructure and oil and gas projects along the littoral, giving really information about the risk, biological risk. And I think we can run in this road with many other good examples that the Síntese Center can bring. And we are also working again with many of you in the impact reduction plans for hydroelectric dams. One question is, for example, which Amazonian river rivers should not be should not suffer such a huge interference. And as a last example, I'd like to make a play for the ocean. I brought some maps here just to show how the sea is completely invisible for us. For example, we have many maps from IBGE, our Institute for Geography and Statistics, and we never have the sea either represented or either with its ecosystems. But we have in the figure to the left, we have the activity of just one fishery, just one kind of boats and fish species. Look the extension of this activity. And in the right, we have the reduction in adequability of a group of fishes, also studied with the help of Professor Paulo here, present. I'm talking very rapidly. So we have such invisibility, but a large proportion of threatened species in this ecosystem biome, and also many infrastructure projects that we are never heard about them. But also we must say that we need really these good analyses, prognostics and diagnostics and so on. But what we see is that these analyses, they do not have a sound impact. Without this collective knowledge building, all these decisions I told first, they were built with many actors, stakeholders. And this collective knowledge building leads to agreements and roadmaps, so then that we can find a way to build the policies. And I would like to say that the Institute has good expertise in such processes, and we are pleased to help Symbiote in that. And to end, I'd like to really to thank Dr. Laura Mega for bringing this intellectual excitement and the new knowledge frontiers related to putting people together to build our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. Your presentation make it very clear how important is a center devoted to biodiversity and how much agencies can really benefit from the center. And you have now time for questions.
Hello there, Robson again. Boticário Group Foundation is a partner of ICMBio in several projects, and I wish to ask Katia especially about Sysbiota licenses in protected areas. The license, the requirement that researchers need to ask ICMBio to Sysbio, right? Sysbio, and how you manage Sysbio data bank, and if it's possible to share data with all the repositories we're talking before.
Hello, I'm Sidney from the University of Maringá. Thank you both for your nice talks. My question is for Anna from Anna, yes? Okay, you talked about the environmental or ecological flows. I think this is a very important issue nowadays in Brazil. And my question is that I think this one of the greatest conflicts we have nowadays in Brazil is exactly the conflict between what is necessary for the ecological, for biodiversity and ecosystem services maintenance and production of energy, because most of our energy comes from hydroelectricity power plants. So what's the role of the ANA to solve this conflict? Do you have the power to make these hydroelectrical companies to follow at least reasonably the ecosystem or the environmental flows?
My question is very similar to, it's about the flows, the pulses. So by flows, I understand that pulses as well must be defined. So to keep the flows in such a way that you have floods and so that's I understood when you said flows, but that you have this broad.
That's the hydrogram, not
yes,
one
yes,
flow.
yes.
Yeah.
Talking about flow, I was thinking about data flow, and I would be interested on, so Anna has a lot of data, and that is being available on the web to a certain level, and how that, and also ICMBio, how you think on interacting with the Synthesis Center in other direction in terms of providing or kind of a packing structure of data so the Synthesis Center can eventually use the data for them. Thank you.
Okay, so first on e-flows and the conflicts with hydropower generation. So I have good news. Hydropower generation does not win every time anymore. We manage river basins from some time based on water security. So we have to guarantee water for multiple uses. And they do comply because they have to. So now we are in charge and we are empowered. And we have, I specifically work in the superintendency that sets the operational rules for the dams. It doesn't mean that the environmental requirements are met because we are not aware of them. Usually we are not aware of them. The environmental requirements are always inside the regulation for the rules for operating the reservoirs when they exist. But that's usually happens in the licensing process. So the rule is that the constructor, the operator of the dam is the one that says the environmental requirement is this one and this one and this one. And usually it's a steady flow. So we're rebuilding the San Francisco River Basin, the San Francisco River operational rules, and that's for the first time we will have pulses for fishes inside lakes that they form when yeah. So, but that's not really something that was very scientific. I can say that because we did not have access to this kind of studies. So this is something that was built together with IBAMA, which is in charge of providing the licenses for these operations. But it's heavily based on what the entrepreneur says is necessary for the river basin. It's not really a systematic evaluation. So this is a major gap. And it's something that can have a really, really high cost in the future. Because when we decide that the environment is important for water, that there are environmental requirements, we may end at the same point that Australia did. They had to buy back authorizations for water use at a very high cost, because we are talking about river basins that are already, the water balance is not very comfortable. So this is something that has to be addressed right now, and we have to think of the future. And of course, when I say e-flows, I say the hydrogram. And that's something that we have to measure what are the impacts of major crises like this scarcity crisis that we have right now. Most of our hydro systems are under the average for some years now. And how do they recover? How many years do we need? What is the requirement for, where's the point of no return for the environment? When do we really lose things that cannot come back? So it's important for a well-informed decision-making. About data availability, ANA has a policy that everything we pay for or everything we produce is completely and totally available for free for everyone in the world. So it's, everything is web-based and everyone can access. And that's a problem we have sometimes when we make a call for researchers. Because usually authors or the researchers, they do not provide all the data that is generated, and at least not until they have already published every single thing. So it's public funding, so we should be public data, but that we know something has to the things that you need to publish, it has to be for the first time and so on. So it's a discussion we always have with CNPq, with CAPES, when we are funding researches.
Well, I'm happy with these notices about ANA. These studies, they're really very important. In relation to CSBU and other systems, we have CSBU, many of these systems deal with data from researchers. So we have a policy that's published, and researchers decide, they inform which is the time they decide to make the data available, from 0 to 5 years. But in CSB, we have just occurrence data, not data related to populations and monitoring data. But these are the available ones, the already available ones, may be found in the Portal da Biodiversidade. Portal was built with Antonio to make these data available to society, but also integrating data from other systems that we are responsible for. For example, systems related also to environmental licensing, like CITAMAR and others, more to the sea, and all the systems that our research centers are responsible for. And also, we have now the monitoring program called Monitora, Programa Nacional de Monitoramento da Biodiversidade, and we are already gathering data from about 80 protected areas, and these are also open data after an evaluation and a quality process. And the more advanced protocols, they also under this policy, but with a larger time, about 4 years in the maximum. But this is it's like ANA, we must have all data published.
Just to add to that, answering to your question, if everything would be available, yeah, of course. And we have a portal for this, Portal de Metadados, which is already available, and we can establish specific protocols if it's necessary to talk to the, yeah, that's what you wanted to know, yeah, okay.
But for monitoring data, the difficulty is really having many biologists dealing with this reality and trying to build the data protocols for so many kinds of data from licensing, from monitoring of many groups. So we are struggling in this arena, but I think that with good results in the next year.
Okay, any question?
Thank you. This is just a comment. I thought both of your talks were excellent, and I think you've really underscored some of the great added value that this new Synthesis Center can have to generate this kind of dialogue so that there's mutual understanding, so the researchers understand some of the scientific content, some of the constraints very intelligent people are under that don't want to read can't read great big reports, and the kinds of ways that decisions are actually made with different perspectives as well as the research perspective all needing to be brought together and what effort that takes. And so I just think this panel, what you folks have said, really emphasizes the role, the great role of the Synthesis Center. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Katja. And time for breakfast.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope nobody can sleep now after the coffee break, not breakfast. So we have now a more or less huge section with 6 people, because one of the invited, that is Diego Arruda from Fundo Newton, he couldn't come because of some health issues. So I will call all of you, and I think it's a quite exciting moment because we are, and I am willing to see the perspectives of the funding agents and international collaborators. Just to highlight some of the very important points, maybe they don't will touch them, but I would appreciate to hear their opinion or some of their opinions on the virtual or physical center, the data management issues, and why not funding issues. So I'm calling in the order of the list I have, Marcelo Morales, please, from CNPq. Luis Nunes from FAPESP. Zaira Turchi from CONFAP. Oliver Fudin from CNRS. Catherine Winkler, DFG, and Robson Caprezzi from Fundação Grupo Boticário. Thank you. Okay, please, Dr. Marcelo Morales, take your time. I hope we can stick in about 10 minutes each one, not more than that. Otherwise, we will lose the bus.
Thank you, Maite, to organize this session. And, well, I'm representing the CNPq. That is the National Council for Scientific and Technological Research. It's a federal agency. And we start our work 67 years ago in 1951. And basically, we are divided in 2 major directors. We have the Agrarian, Biological, and Health Sciences director, that's me, and also Dr. Adriana, that is director from Engineering, Human and Social Sciences. So they are the major directors. And also we have the institutional collaboration director that is really important in the issue that we start to discuss today about the Synthesis Center, because we have a lot of connection, international connection, that we have to to be attention about it, and that is really very important. We start the connection with our collaboration, but in the formal issues, we have to think about the director of international and collaboration. So we have the whole CNPq involved in this initiative, and our budget in 1914, we expand together with another ministries 3.5 billion reais. It was around $1 billion dollars in 2014. In 2018, we are investing half of this amount. And mainly, we invest the money in calls. We launched calls for proposals and scholarships for master, PhD, postdocs. And the projects, we support projects, individual projects and projects in Nanette programs. And I highlight in the field that we are discussing here is the environment. The PELD, the long-term ecological research that we invest in 35 sites in the whole country. We start with 5 million at CNPq. Just to let you know about the importance of CNPq to articulate with the other agencies and partners in different issues. We had, for example, for PELD, we had 5 million. And together with CONFAP, CAPES, and Mercedes was there when we articulated this program. We launched this call with 25 million. So the importance of the articulation to put everybody together, this is the whole, the key point of CNPq. This is the importance of CNPq more than money. Of course, we are going to invest, but the articulation that CNPq has is really very important. Another program that we have is the Nexus program that we launched together with CONFAP and also the Ministry of Science and Technology, that we invest in biomas in different parts of the Brazilian sites, 24 million in the last year. So I highlight also the Cisbiota and now the Síntese Center. Also, I would like to highlight the National Institute of Science and Technology, the INCTs. That's a really very important program that we are supporting together with CONFAP and CAPES and CNPq, and we are investing around 1 billion reais in this program. So, and we have a different several, we invested in 102 INCTs, and several of them has the environmental research involved in the INCTs. And this was really very important to put together all the agencies together to launch this program that's really very important also in the environmental field. In Symbiosis, we have started this discussion in 2016, and we discussed this initiative with CAPES, CNPq, CONFAP, IFAPESP, FINEP, and other agencies that were invited to discuss this initiative. And also, we visited and we invite different synthesis centers to think about the synthesis center together with all these partners. We started with FAPESP at the beginning because FAPESP had an initiative, an idea to have a synthesis center in the beginning, and we had the same idea. So was really very important, the discussion with FAPESP, and we put the effort together and we started this initiative together in 2016, inviting different researchers and people from abroad. We visit the different synthesis center in different countries, and how CNPq can be involved in this initiative, not only articulating. We already invested money in the synthesis center. We invested around $100,000 in this initiative in the beginning to make the starting of this initiative, to have the visitors to go abroad and to put money to have meetings and to start this initiative at the CNPq level. As I said, also we have Marisa here, full-time involved in this initiative. So this is really very important, and also the involvement of the director of the DABIS, the Agrarian, Biological, and Health Science, that's me, in this initiative. To put together the synthesis center is really very important. Once we have the institution of symbiosis at CNPq level, doesn't depend on me anymore. So we have all the partners together. We have a resolution at CNPq level to have this I don't know how to say the word, but institutionalized at CNPq. And this is really very important. My involvement and Marisa's involvement are full-time in this initiative. And I think this is a really very important initiative because we have to show the importance of research for the policymakers and also for the society. I know that is not the only importance of Synthesis Center, but is one of the goals of the Synthesis Center, to put all the data together and show the power of the research for the environmental proposal. So I'm not going to say too much, just these words. You know about what the CNPq is doing right now. The issue is to articulate the agreements between partners, to call different partners, new partners, as you saw here, ANA and ICMBio, and they are very enthusiastic about the initiative, and also the partners from the private sector, like Natura, and also the Newton Fund, that is interested to invest in this synthesis center. And I would like to highlight the discussion that we have to do with all partners. It's not only CNPq that's going to do that. The construction of the normative resolution for the synthesis center that's going to be shared between the CONFAP, that includes all the agencies, state agencies, and also CNPq, CAPES, and other partners. And this has to be discussed, is not done, is under discussion, and at least with me, nothing is put up to down, has to be discussed. Of course, we put some things to be discussed, but it is not done, and you can contribute with all issues and all the steps for this initiative. And thank you for the attention. I'm not going to talk too much, and I'm really glad to discuss with you about the Synthesis Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelo. We are going to move for the next invited, and we leave the questions, if some, for the end. And so I'm calling Zaira Turki. She will talk first because she needs to leave earlier.
Thank you, Maite. I apologize, but I have a flight, so I'll stay here up to the time I can, and then I have to leave. But I'm going to make a very short presentation, just mainly for the international researchers that are here can have a better idea of who we are and how do we work. So, can I go there? Não, vou ali em pé. Vou ali em pé. É? Obrigada.
Se vocês sentem mais
aqui é onde que eu... Essa setinha é essa aqui? Tá bom. Okay. So, as I said this morning, I represent the Brazilian National Council of State Funding Agencies. I guess that's correct. Okay, just to give you an idea, CONFAP is a non-profit organization that represents all Brazilian state funding agencies, as we call ourselves FAPs. So if you hear somewhere FAP, it's one of each state funding agency of the 26 states that have already its own funding agents. Certainly you have the federal district, DF, Brasília, but up to the north, as you can see, the state of Roraima is to be, the FAP there is to be set up. It's not yet functioning. They have some funds, but they don't have really a state funding agency. But we are, so 26 FAPs. We have capillarity, we have wide spectrum of actions and acknowledgement of regional differences. This is something very important. I think we have, as Marcelo said, at the federal, Brazilian has a funding system, a CIT system that includes the federal agencies, CNPq, CAPES, FINEP, and at the state level, we have the funding agencies. And so we can bring to the discussion the regional differences, the challenges we have to develop science all over the country. This is very, very important, we consider. We can act in the three-pillar: people, research, and innovation. That is also something very good, because we have a collaboration with CAPES, and the pillar of people, of capacity building. We have, and also with CNPq, we have collaboration in research with CNPq and international institutions also. And we have also collaboration with FINEP, that in Brazil is in charge mainly for innovation. So we can also fund industry in innovation projects, etc. We sit on the board of important R&D organizations, and we have a representative role of the state funding agents. It's good that CONFAP, because of the time I have to leave, but I talked before Luis, because he's going to present FAPESP, is the more important, say most important, I cannot say this near to the others because they will complain. I'm sorry, I'm going to say in another way. FAPESP was the first one to be created. is very consolidated, and it's really, we look at FAPESP in order to consolidate our own state funding agency. So it's a very important agency, and when Luis presents FAPESP, you can consider it that each state, each funding agency is in a different scale, certainly acting in a similar way in the state. Okay, we have, as I said, the partnership and networks with CAPES, NPQ, FINEP, and also we have international cooperation with different countries, as you can see briefly there. As CONFAP, we have partnership with the UK in the context of Newton Fund. Since 2014, we run calls, important calls with BBSRC, MRC, all the, and also with the British Council and different pillars, people, research, and innovation. And we have also a good collaboration with the European Union in the context of Horizon 2020. Since to present projects to Horizon 2020, our researchers have to have co-funding, their own funding, so the state funding agencies publish the guidelines that in not all the states, but many states, that enable researchers to count on specific funding for to be in Horizon 2020 projects. Now CNPq also launched the guidelines, and we are together in this, also in these actions. Okay, that's it. It's not necessary anymore. I just want to conclude here in saying that for us, it's, I'm sorry, I'm coming back here. I'm sorry, making all this movement. But it's very important for us to be here. We consider, as Marcelo said, we are in important national programs of biodiversity as PELG, INCT, and et cetera, we are together and we co-fund projects in this area. And we consider that it's very important to have all the state funding agencies together in this such an important center of synthesis center that we consider something that is very challenges, certainly, but very stimulating and very important for Brazil. As this morning, many important things were said about funders play a key role. And I think we have really to think about this. For us, each time of public money, of public budget, we have to consider impacts. We have to have clear the possibility of present the impacts of research. And so we believe that moving through the possibility of the center, of a synthesis center, we can have the impacts in biodiversity that is very, very thematic, very important. And we can, considering framing calls for proposals, as Laura said, a structuring review process, and we have to do this together with the researchers, because the funders, we are researchers ahead of the funding agencies. So we have to change the way to think about this in order to change also the procedures in the funding agencies. So we have to talk. We have to work very closely to the researchers and to the groups in order to build up this new possibility to really achieve what now we consider really something very important, the impact for policy, for decision makers in this area. So I don't have clear yet how we can help, we can be together, all the state funding agencies. I think we have to build up together certainly the possibility to support such an important project as this one. And I believe that at the end of this meeting, Marcelo will tell me more about what are the possibilities of our contribution. How can we contribute better in the center, considering not only the funding of the projects, because this we already done. We are already a partner in, with CNPq, with international institutions, agencies, in order to open opportunities for our researchers in Brazil to collaborate, to work together with important groups abroad and in Brazil. But we want to know how we can collaborate to structure better the Synthesis Center in Brazil. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zaira. Now move on. We are going to call Dr. Luis Nunes from FAPESP that I don't need to talk about because Zaira already did.
Okay, let me start by thanking Maite and Zaira for presenting me. So you can think of FAPESP as the oldest system. Okay, all right. Okay, so but for those who are not familiar, FAPESP is a state agency, as it is explained. It's fully funded by the state of São Paulo, and we get 1% of the state's revenues. This has been religiously paid since 1962. They never missed a beat in this. And so we are very fortunate because that allows us to know how much money we're going to get next year, roughly, with the uncertainties due to the economy. Right? Our mission is to fund every kind of research independent of area or methods. And we try to work within this framework. Then you may very well ask, well, how can FAPESP help this Synthesis Center? Well, you can think of us as a toolbox. And I'll explain how that works. We have, let's see. Okay, we have a variety of programs that could be used to benefit this center, right? And they are ready to go, okay? For instance, we have one of the biggest trusts we have is this thematic project, which is a long scale project, 5 years, lots of money involved, and some people can take part in one of these projects and use part of the money to do work related with synthesis. We also have regular projects which are smaller scale, less up to 2 years, and that would, I think, suit very well one synthesis project. We would love to have a young researcher come, especially if he or her comes from abroad, doesn't have to be Brazilian, we don't care about passports, we care about vitae, right? And we'd love to have someone come from abroad, take roots in Brazil, or perhaps return from abroad, take roots in Brazil, and be involved in this project. So that's another possibility. We also have a number of programs that are dedicated to exchange. We have postdoc fellowships that can be used by people who come from abroad or from Brazil to do their work here, and they can be involved in a synthesis project. Important thing, we don't want to have the PD just be doing work for several different projects, right? We want the postdoc to have a project of their own, and then that can be really to synthesis. That would be very good, but cannot be a person who is going to be helping several projects without a specific research of their own. We can bring in visiting scholars. We have the Sprint program, which is provides for mobility, and we have the SPEC program, which I think is very attractive. It gives money for research for a top-level researcher from abroad who's willing to be in Brazil for 12 weeks a year. Doesn't have to be consecutive. We don't pay for his stay here, but what we found is that whenever we offer one of these grants, then one of the universities in Brazil is very eager to hire the researcher for those 12 weeks or whatever he or her is staying in Brazil. And then we have money for meetings, for advanced schools, and let me tell you that all of these programs, except for this one, all of these programs do not answer to calls. They all have rolling deadlines. So if you have a project in your drawer, you can bring it out and present to FAPESP tomorrow, right? So we'll be ready to process it. And so, as I said, we have all the instruments. Let me show you a little bit more this picture. Sorry, it shouldn't be here, but these are all these cooperations we have abroad. These are very active programs. So there are lots of alternatives to be used there. These involve cooperation with universities, with funding agencies abroad. Most countries are represented here. A few ones are missing, but very, very few. And finally, I'd like to point out that whenever you want to do something, you have to ask yourself the 4 questions. What I want to do, what do I want to do, what I don't want to do, what I can do, what I cannot do. Right? I'm sure every one of you is thinking about that when dreams of your synthesis center or project. Let me tell you what we from FAPESP want, do not want, can, cannot. Right? What we want is good research. That's the basic thing. Right? How it's done, it's up to the researcher. But if it is good, we are ready to accept it. Right? That's the fundamental rule. What we don't want is something that may be of public benefit, may be of social impact, but does not involve research. If it does not involve research, well, there may be other ways to finance it, but it's outside of the scope of FAPESP. Right? What we can do, we can finance research that in some way is linked to the state of São Paulo. That there are 2 kinds of activities. One's activities that are done in the state of São Paulo, and the activities that are done outside of the state of São Paulo by researchers from the state of São Paulo. In either case, we can use money to help the research. What we can't do is when you don't satisfy these conditions, okay? But then there's a very large amplitude for activities that fall within the scope, and I'll let you ask me questions about that if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. So, going to our next invited. I'm calling Olivier Fooding.
Thank you.
Are you going to present in PowerPoint?
No, indeed, I had some slides, but I'm afraid that maybe some of them are already, most of them are already presented previous time in Brasilia. I'm not sure. Okay. But, and also, I don't want to miss the bus, so I will just present quickly. Bon. First of all, I really want to acknowledge for the kind invitation, not only for me, not only for CNRS, but I find really nice this open mind that you have in the creation of the Synthesis Center, giving insight right at the beginning of the process for international cooperation. Because as you know, the project, as we saw this morning, is a global, transverse, inter and transdisciplinary project. It's quite important. As you know, as researchers, as we know as researchers, interdisciplinary is not easy to do. This morning we spoke about the role of the funding agency, that I can confirm also as well that academia doesn't help either. It's a very, very difficult matter. What I observe at my observation place as a director for CNRS here in Brazil is, it seems to me that deeply international cooperation helps to interdisciplinary projects, because when you work with another colleague in another country, many times it's much more quietful, peaceful, and simple in a way, because you don't have the neighbors challenge, to collaborate in a very complementary way. So I observe, from my point of view, that many of the projects, generally, you will agree, researchers are not stupid, and they collaborate because they have interest to collaborate, or for complementary, for many reasons, methodological approaches, etc. And among those reasons, most of times it's interdisciplinary action that they have. So I really think that this part of the creation of the Synthesis Center is quite important. Well, I won't speak about CNRS. I think that we already did. Maybe just because you pointed out about CNPK, 51, that next year we will celebrate the 80 years anniversary of CNRS. So probably we will have maybe the opportunity to make some joint events for that occasion. And also speaking about global challenges and the international cooperation, we can announce also, I'm really glad that the French president had this initiative for Make Our Planet Great Again for people, mostly in the United States, who are working with climate change, to be hosted in France. And the second stage of the call, we had 4 Brazilian girl researchers who were selected. So, parabéns for Brazil. Next, maybe I could speak a little bit about what could CNRS do in this nice projects as Synthesis Center. As you may know, CNRS, unfortunately, I don't know, is not a funding agency, but as it is a major research organization, it has some means to organize and support international collaborations. Indeed, in Brazil, we are deeply present with about maybe more than about 400,000 euros each year only for mobility, CNRS mobility project, about all the projects we have together with CONFAP, with FAPES, etc. And then the researcher may by their own support the research itself. So I'm very happy of the project with Jérôme Chave, the LabEx, which is laboratory of maybe somewhere about LabEx. So this laboratory of excellences were created in 2010 within a big plan, strategic plan of the French government then to make investment for long-term investment. In that vein, surprisingly, it worked very well. So sometimes it works. A lot of work, a lot of money supporting long-term projects. LabEx is a 10 years plan, and it's a lot of money that helps you to collaborate between a huge amount of groups and to finance a huge amount of postdoctoral position and PhD. So I think this will be a very, very nice opportunity for this new collaboration. But as you told this, you spoke this morning that you also have interest to include humanities in the. I think it's important. We can also think about other LabEx similar to SEBA but which I think about LabEx Dream in Marseille, which is a laboratory of excellences, which is just gathering different what we call observatoires au milieu. These are organized by the Institute, maybe you know that CNRS is divided in 10 institutes thematically. One is ecology and the environment, and they have all over the world some observatory of that kind, who are a mix between ecology and humanities, geography, biology, etc. There is one in Oyapock, the frontier with French Guyana, about the bridge, and which is part of this laboratory of excellency. And we have one in Chile, in Patagonia. Also, this is a Bahia Exploradores, is a place where recently, an untouched place of Patagonia, because only recently was built a road there. So it's a way to observe in real time the influence of man on the ecosystem. So this is, speaking about this observatory in Patagonia, let me the opportunity also to tell that I would find very nice for the next seminar to also have colleagues from Colombia, Argentina, Chile, because I think that for this kind of global topics, regional cooperation is also very important. It's a topic that I really like and work in my job, but I think that for a project as a Synthesis Center, it will be, if possible, I don't know how, but it could be very of interest. So let's not miss the bus. I finished there. Thank you.
So thank you, Olivier. Now we are going to ask our friend Catherine Winkler to talk.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to give, I would like to give an overview about our programs we can offer for international collaboration. So international collaboration between Brazilian or for Brazilian and German researchers, and then this might be of your interest. Maybe very briefly as an introduction, I can in principle, I could say we are very similar to FAPESP. So funding agency, but for entire Germany, not only for a state. We are the largest funding organization for curiosity-driven research, and what is most important, that we are organized like a club, and we have members, and our members are universities, research institutions, and so on. We work with public money, but we are independent, so that is also from some advantage. important is also that we are working according to the so-called bottom-up principle. That means that we are receiving research ideas from the researchers. We don't have strategic priorities, but we react to the needs of the researchers, and we fund what is being approved by our evaluation processes. Which is very different to what the Ministry of Germany for Research and Innovation, for instance, is doing. And we are also supporting international cooperation, although we are a German funding agency, what also means that we are investing our money in Germany for research in Germany, either for German research or foreign research, but generally it remains in Germany. So this is also a very important issue for you. And if I talk about our programs, these are all programs that people doing research in Germany can apply for. And our working principle in international collaboration is that we have to work mainly, at least in the countries where we have partner organizations and established research and funding structures. We are working with our partners like FAPESP, like CNPq, like CAPES, for instance, on the basis of so-called matching funds. No? So the Brazilian researchers are being financed by the Brazilian funding agency. Very briefly, we have a budget of about 3.2 billion euros in 2017, and we have funded about 30,000 projects, from small projects to bigger projects, instrumentation, or coordinated programs. We have offices worldwide, one of which is in Sao Paulo, the youngest one, being responsible for international collaboration for all Latin American countries. And we serve here as a contact point. We advise researchers. We maintain our collaboration with our partner organizations here in Sao Paulo and Brasilia and so on. We are developing instruments together with our partner organizations to provide joint procedures for funding joint research projects. And we are also active in so-called research marketing or outreach, so to say. This is actually our office, what you see here in Chacara Santo Antonio. In all our DFG programs, and these are about 35 now, international collaboration is possible. So you could always apply for a module for international collaboration, so to say, but we are using some programs more often, and I would like to present you those programs, which is mainly the program called Initiation of an International Collaboration, that allows you to fund workshops, research stays, visits of foreign researchers in Germany, or visits of German researchers in Brazil, for instance. This is only for just exchanging ideas, working a little bit together. This is only travel money and money for accommodation. So this is not really research projects. This is just for initiating something that could result in a research project. And if you're at this stage and there's a respective program for a research project, for a joint research project, you may apply for a joint research project according to the funding programs of DFG and the corresponding funding programs of our partner organization. And if you have more than or a wider topic and more PIs who want to collaborate on a wider research topic, then you may consider a so-called coordinated program or collaborative research program, something like international research training groups, research units, or collaborative research centers. I don't want to go into too much detail, but we have, for instance, together with FAPESP, we have very detailed programs developed in all three lines. So there's information on our websites on how to receive funding in those projects, also in a bilateral and international context. We have agreements with, or active agreements, so to say, together with CAPES since '95. We have an agreement with CNPq since 2007, with FAPESP since 2006, with FAPEMIC from Minas Gerais since 2009, and with FAPERJ from Rio de Janeiro since 2014. And what we are funding with those funding organization is varying actually. So with FAPESP, we have the widest spectrum. With FAPERJ, it's at the moment a bit narrower, since Rio de Janeiro is in a very critical situation. And with CAPES, it's going also very well, and we are on the way of broadening our collaboration and opportunities for funding. These are more details to FAPESP. I think this is not now too much detail. As I said, we have all 3 funding lines developed with them, and if you have more questions, please contact me and ask for more details with regard to the submission and evaluation procedure. As an example, maybe for a bigger research project, we have an international research training group, and a research training group is a program that allows PhD, or that allows doing research for a group of PIs and a group of PhDs within a framework. So a group of, let's say, between 6 and 10 PIs, up to 15 PhD students are doing research towards receiving their PhD, but they are also receiving training and supervision component, and they have to do an exchange, so they have to spend one part of their PhD thesis in Germany, and the Brazilians and the Germans have to spend part of the PhD thesis in Brazil. So this is a very nice instrument to allow internationalization at a very early stage of career and combine very many aspects of research. And we have one financed together with FAPESP on the basis of FAPESP program Temático and our program, which is in the area of physics. And this is also a program that this is open at any times. And you may consider, if you, for instance, if the center is founded and you have some broader idea and would like to extend research to the training of PhD students. And with CAPES, we have another nice example, which is called Brage Kring, initiative that was running 10 years in manufacturing engineering. This is something like, we have a program at DFG which is called Priority Program, which are project funding in entire Germany on a specific topic of specific relevance. So in principle, this is a bilateral priority program, a variety of bilateral projects being organized within a bilateral network. This has been running for 10 years, involves more than 30 institutions, and also considers, since this is together with CAPES and originally also with SIMPQ, student exchange and work missions. They have annual meetings and regular calls for proposals in order to include new projects into the network. And we have now, since this was quite a success in this area, we have now established this kind of initiative for industry 4.0, advanced digitalization and chemistry, and we are working towards in the area of law. These are just some examples of what we could do. What we could also do is promote institutional collaborations, for instance, on the basis of already existing institutions or research centers, such as the IDIF. No? And we could also consider, if you're considering partners from the US or France to be involved, how to arrange multilateral collaboration on this kind of institutional projects. And this is, I think, just to give you an overview what we have already and what we may offer in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. And now, last but not least, we are going, on behalf of Fundação Grupo Boticário, we are going to hear Robson Capretz.
Good afternoon. I am Robson Capretz. I'm analyst of Boticário Group Foundation. Boticário Group Foundation is linked to one of the largest cosmetic performance beauty companies in Southern Hemisphere. It's Boticário. It's the national leader of this segment. We was born in 1990 before the Rio 92 by the will of our founder, our president. And since 1991, we keep public calls for proposals. Since then, we donated more than $15 million. And until now, we keep at least 2 public calls every year with 3 to 4 million reais. Our mission is promote and execute and support conservation actions in Brazil. We are settled in Curitiba, but we can support projects all over the country. So we are owners of 2 private preserves at Atlantic Rainforest and Cerrado. And we organize the Brazilian Congress on Protected Areas in each 3 years. We have the last one at Florianópolis at the end of July this year. We support field research actions since 1991. We work with climate change. We coordinate the Climate Observatory since 2005. We work with environmental economy, ecosystem services, including payment for ecosystem services in 4 states, Minas Gerais, Santa Catarina, Paraná, and Rio de Janeiro. We are partners of CNPq with the Jovem Cientista Prize, with CNPq and Fundação Roberto Marinho. And we have partnerships with FAPESP and Fundação Araucária. It's the Paraná State Agency. We launched a public call with FAPESP in 2012. And every year we have a public call with Fundação Araucária. That's at Paraná. So we've been supporting more than 1,500 initiatives since 1991. Working with more than 250 endangered species and more than 500 protected areas in Brazil. In the last years, we got a special emphasis in marine and coastal conservation because our goals are related with Aichi targets and the Sustainable Development Goals on the next decade. So we work with public policies, innovation, technology, and conservation actions at the field. So one of my objectives here is how can we help the Síntese Center? We can help you to identify the gaps, opportunities, especially monitoring and protecting biodiversity. Decision making is very important because if everything is a priority, nothing really is. So it will be painful, but we must choose among several environmental issues here. We must have a common agenda because main nature conservation questions must be addressed on symbiosis. And the challenges we have in the next years were about communication with society and policymakers. We've been working since 2013, bringing our supported projects with public policymakers. And we helped ICMBio and Ministry of Environment in recent years to strengthen protected areas, especially the creation of new protected areas at Paraná State and recently, Katja talked a little bit about the marine protected areas created at March of this year. So we must keep environmental services and nature-based solutions compared with gray infrastructure, and essentially protecting species, their habitats, and national goals on this decade until 2020 and the next one. So we will keep public calls. It's our core business, and we can help the Symbiosis to fill the gaps, and you can help us to guide new public calls. And of course, we are open to new partnerships and exchange of knowledge, because every single action of Boticário Group Foundation is always scientific, is based on scientific knowledge. Okay, thank you very much.
So, I think we can use another 5 minutes, maybe, for some questions, I guess, because time is already. You decide. 2 questions. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the presentations. It's quite nice to hear that all the institutions and organizations here are buying the idea of the Synthesis Center. My question is more related to how we can improve the way you manage calls that have different funders. I will use PELD as an example. It's quite nice that we have CNPq, CAPES, and FAPES involved. But for the PI, this means that we have to deal with the CNPq system, with the CAPES systems, and the FAPES system. So, and this can be really, the transaction costs are quite high for scientists. So is there a way, I know that is quite difficult, but if we can innovate, so maybe for the synthesis centers, the way we put different monies in just one basket and manage that, this will make the life for scientists much easier, or at least for the people that is involved in the administrative issues. So do you think that there is a possibility to think about that, how we can put all the funders together in just one institution? All will have the brands and names there, but this is just be one contact point for the scientists. I think this is quite important. So,
my question is related to the after election. So for Dr. Marcelo, is in your opinion to maintain this center, the Symbiosis, as an initiative, not a program in the CNPq, is enough to guarantee the consolidating the center, as a program or institution or whatever?
And I have a question to the CNRS person. So do you think you would rather spend maybe funding supporting Symbiose than CNRS itself funding its own synthesis center, the French one, I mean? So there's a French synthesis center, so do you think CNRS could spend money on both, or rather here, or rather in France?
I think I was the major point here. But Mercedes, first answering your question, I think for CNPq it's very simple. It's not complicated because we respect the singularity of each agency. For example, as Luis said, São Paulo has, well, FAPESP just can support the researchers from São Paulo, right? And the meeting that is held in São Paulo So if we decide that we are going to have one team for one decided issue for the Síntese Center, one team, we are going to have, maybe we are going to have one meeting in São Paulo, another one in Brasília, another one in Goiás. That's going to be supported by the FAPI from Goiás, from São Paulo, and from Brasília. So for the meeting, we are going to have the support from FAPIs. And I'm thinking, together with you. And the researchers can be supported by, if we have a meeting in Brasília and we have researchers from São Paulo, they can pay for the researchers to have to go to Brasília. All the initiatives and the goals and interaction with CNPq, we respect the singularity of each agency. For CAPES, for example, they told me already that they are going to give us the support with postdoc fellows. So it's not necessarily to put the money at CNPq. Exactly the same for the FAPIs. It's not necessary to put the money at CNPq. We can articulate, of course, the federal money from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. They are going to put the money at CNPq because it's easy and they support the initiative. They told me already they are going to give a support of 1 million to start. So this is already solved. With the FAPIs, we can discuss how we can launch the call. We are going to decide here the themes that we are going to support, 4 or 5, I don't know. You are going to decide about this. And once we have decided the themes that we are going to support, we are going to think how to support this. And if FAPESP is going to hold one meeting, another from Brasília, another in Paraíba, I don't know. I had already the support from CONFAP to articulate with 26 state foundations to support for holding the meetings in different locations, and also to support the researchers from their own states. So Zaira told me that they are going to articulate this as soon as we have the result of this symposium, this meeting, to decide the themes that we are going to support. So I think we are used to do this at CNPq in different calls, and I think it's not complicated to have this call as we did with another initiatives. Okay, you're going to complement.
I think that my question is also related, as Diane's mentioned. So if you send the funds direct to the PI, and the PI has to deal with 3 different agencies, that is quite complicated.
No. We are going to put the money from CNPq, for example, to your name, and the support to you from the FAP from Brasília is going to be direct to you from the FAP from Brasília.
That is the point, because the agents, they have different forms, different ways to prepare the final report, accountability, and sometimes very conflicted rules, actually. So I'm just thinking, because this will help scientists a lot to focus on the research and the teams. If we can just have one agency that really can put all the money together and use, or at least have a system that is similar for the different agencies? Because, as I said,
I think it's more complicated that way.
Okay.
I don't think is. We have to respect. I learned in these 5 years at CNPq that we have to respect the individuality of each partner. Otherwise, we cannot work. I think it's more complicated for the researcher that is organizing the
So
the team.
In this case, I think principal investigator will be poor investigators because it's going to suffer under this system. But I mean, this is important because
I think it's an exercise to do. I'm just telling you what is possible, and at the researcher, I'm a researcher also. Point of view, we have to discuss what is better.
Because this will have impacts on the way we are going to manage the center.
I think it's very important to think about that. And also to answer your question, I think we are in the middle of the exercise. We're exercising this initiative. I don't know how going to end, but I have the knowledge, and I'm sure that we have to start. And I think we have the support from CNPq as a logistic center, but without the partners like São Paulo and Confap and CAPES and Boticário, that's really important to support, and other partners like ANA. I don't know if we are going to decide to have a team that is going to support by ANA, but we are going to decide here, we are going to think about the next step. And for example, the Boticário, I always call Boticário, I'm sorry, Natura. But Boticário, for example, that's something. Boticário is very important for partnership with CNPq. They are supporting the Prêmio Jovem Cientista. That's really very important. And also they supposed to support the Síntese Center also. And for example, the money from Boticário, if they decide to put the money that we think each team that we are going to support is going to cost around 700,000 reais. That's around $200,000, more or less. If they decide to put this money at CNPq, it's not going to work because, as you know, we have the law that we cannot put the money from the private sector in our institution, otherwise we are going to lose money from the public sector. So it's the Brazilian jabuticaba that we have to help to work with. But at CNPq, we did a call for foundations. So we are going to have foundations at CNPq. So they are going to they have the opportunity to put the money at the foundation. Then we have the support from the foundation, from the money from the private sector, that we solve this problem with the foundations. So I think to consolidate the initiative is just after this exercise of 2 or 3 years, and we are going to see how does it work and fix in the middle of the process. We have 2 years already discussing this. I think it's time to start.
Maybe I answer to the question for Saneas before to have a new question. The answer is no. No. As far as I know, because I'm not a specialist, CNRS is founder and partner of the Fédération française de la recherche en biodiversité. And I think it's through the foundation that CNRS, I'm not sure that CNRS will support directly CESAB, but through the foundation. And for about Symbiose, CNRS will support the teams who have projects like International Lab. If you collaborate with some research team in France associated with CNRS, and together you may present a project and then be supported for that part of the team. But it will never be a direct funding for the center. Okay.
Yes, just one comment in terms of long-term funding strategy. So I think what we're discussing here, it's funding for specific projects within the center. So one strategy would to think about would be how the long-term secure funding for infrastructure or for whatever we're talking about during the day, where that is. So I think that's one important thought that we have to put on the table. One idea is that as we're talking about high level in terms of federal government, next year is whoever is going to be there, which we don't know. But next year, despite whoever's there, it's going to be the Plano Plurianual, the new discussion of that. So it would be very important that we, in a way, lobby to have the symbiosis within an action of the Minister of Science and Technology, for instance, of the Minister of the Environment. Because with that, we can play for the budget within the ministry in a way, then we have to find the right way of how this money can be channelized to, for at least during the period of the PPA, which is 4 years. But if we got this within this structure of the planning for expenditure of the government, we might be able to extend it for a longer period instead just the 4 years. Again, despite the fact who is going to be sitting on the chair next year. But I think that would be an important strategy. I don't know how we could lobby this. Certainly having the minister sitting on the table is very important. I don't know if through CNPq we can do that, or through any other channel with the government. I think with those, at least those ministers that are more direct link to the initiative. Yeah, so it's a suggestion on the table so we can think about it. Thank you.
It is still about the problem that was raised by Mercedes. I understand that different sources of funding creates this burden to the PIs, but at least we could try to make first the project synchronic, so that there is no delay in the agreements with the FAPs could be done beforehand. The call, so when the call is approved, we would get the agreement with the CNPq, with the FAP at the same time. I think this would help a lot. And also, if an effort could be done between the agencies in terms of rules for using the funds, it would facilitate a lot, because we have to be aware, okay, this is for the FAP, okay, their rules are this and this and this, we cannot do this, but if we use CNPq, we could. So this is something that is very complicated. If the rules were homogenized for some, that would help a lot. Yeah, if in the agreements for the call, that could be some kind of common rule, some basic rule. For instance, the amount of per diems. So this, I'm not sure if all the FAPs have the same amount, but that creates a complication for the administration of the project if the value that is allowed for different sources is not the same. So this is just an example. Yes. Thank you.
Posso? Tem mais uma pergunta.
Yeah, just one idea for taking the point that Valerio just raised. For some of the international agreements, I think both CNPq and FAPESP have one judgment of a project. You don't have to analyze a project at CNPq and at the international, like the agreement with NERC. FAPESP designates somebody that's going to be part of the evaluation committee, and it's only one evaluation, and once it's approved by NERC and by FAPESP. If it could be the same between CNPq and FAPESP, so when the result comes, it comes at the same time, so and for all the agencies, and the money will be released on the agenda of each agency, but it starts at the same time. It also would help quite a lot.
If I might.
It's okay.
It's okay. The first question is the long-term support for the center. He's not here anymore. So, but I think we have to start. The structure, the infrastructure, to have a place for the synthesis center, I think is the next step. We have to start, and we decide to start virtually, first of all. I think we have to think and show the results. As soon as we show the results, I'm pretty sure that we are going to convince. It's very easy to convince as soon as we have the results, the impact of the results, to convince not only the Congress to put money in this synthesis center. Some Congress person is aware about the synthesis center, and they are aware that possibly, if they are candidates already. So if they are elected, they are going to support the synthesis center. I think we have to show the results, and that we are going to have support also from the Congress, and also from the agencies and the ministers. I think, as I said before, Valerio, is really very difficult to have one way to support the initiatives, like the INCTs and different calls from different initiatives from CNPq together with CONFAP and CAPES and FAPESP. We have to respect the singularity and particularity of each agency. For example, the 25 state agencies, they just say, well, you had already the selections, and you decide at CNPq level each each project that you're going to support, we evaluate, and we accept it. For example, São Paulo, we evaluate and send to São Paulo to be evaluated. So it's different way to work with, but we are used to do that. And I think this is not a huge issue at this point. I think we are aware about that. We have to handle this. It's not a difficulty for CNPq anymore, because we are going to, if we have 5 teams selected, we are going to look at each one in particular. So we are going to help each project with different difficulties. For example, if São Paulo is holding one of the teams, they have some particularity that we are going to be aware together with São Paulo, with FAPESP, to solve the problems for the researchers, as we did with different projects. And with the CAPES, it's easier because we are in Brasilia and we can solve this problem very easily because they pay the scholarship and fellowship for postdoc, in this case, directly to the program. So we have, with support of CNPq, we are used to do this. And I don't think this is a huge issue for the Synthesis Center also. We have this huge program with 1 billion reais, that is ENCTs, with 26 FAPs and CAPES, CNPq, FINEP, and Newton Fund, and other partners. And of course, we have to handle all this money together in each 102 projects. But we have a structure at CNPq to solve those problems. I think very easily, with 5 projects selected, it's not going to be a difficulty for CNPq to handle that, to articulate with the different FAPs and CAPES and different partners.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, and I think you deserve a clap.